working for the recording?
A little bit. Om Gyanatirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksuran Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Yeah, some other drink. Sri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Shayam Rupa Gadamayam Darajisha Padantikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Okay, welcome everyone. I created a document this morning, at least I thought I did. And now, I don't see it. So we have to find it. This is concerning me. It actually got saved. Oh yes, okay. So, I'm just going to read some things. These are things that I wrote in my meditations and study. In my meditations and study about self-deception, I wrote some things. And I want to share them with you. And we have some background music today. I don't know if you can hear it while we're closing the window. You know, it's coming. I think it's still going to come from there. All we hear is a kick drum. Boom, boom, boom. I've started on time and everybody's kind of wandering in. So we're just going to give them a little time to settle down. And think about self-deception. You know, everything that's not true is a self-deception. Everything we don't want to admit that's true is self-deception. We talked about last week, you know, maybe you're getting old and you don't want to admit it. That's self-deception. If you're not as smart as you think you are, that's self-deception. Maybe you think you're way better than you are. That's self-deception. Maybe you think you're worse than you are. That's also self-deception. You know, low self-esteem is also self-deception. Because low self-esteem, you deceive yourself. You think you're low when you're not. And pride, you think you're high when you're not. So there are different kinds of deception. Just different angles of it. Does that make sense? If I think I'm better than I am, I deceive myself. And if you think you're lower than you are, you deceive yourself in the opposite way. You understand? Let's say you're smart and you say, I'm stupid. Let's say I'm stupid and I say I'm smart. It's both self-deception. Just, I'm proud and you're not proud, but you don't have any confidence in yourself, so you say you're worse than you are. And I don't have any confidence in myself, so I say I'm better than I am. It's both the same disease, just going a different way.
What about devotees that are truly humble, like
Yeah. Devotees that are truly humble, they're the only ones who aren't deceived. Because true humility that's truth. They're in touch with reality. So, but their humility, it doesn't come in the form of thinking, I'm not capable or I'm stupid or something. It comes in the form of, I don't have love for Krishna. Or I'm totally dependent on Krishna. Like that. Our so-called humility comes in the form of putting ourselves down for things that may not be true. Like when Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I'm lusty, I'm greedy, I don't think of the welfare of others. So he's assessing himself, or at least playing the part of a conditioned soul, assessing himself. That's true. But for a conditioned soul. But that's different than us saying that. We might say it, not mean it, or say it as an excuse. Sometimes we exhibit humility because it's an excuse. As if I say, well, I'm just lusty, then if you see me doing something lusty, it's okay, because I told you I was lusty. Does that make sense? Like I use it as, that's just how I am. So they don't use it that way. Yes?
Isn't anything self-deception as long as we don't realize who we really are?
Yes.
Because I identify with something, I seem to be at the moment, and it's not true anyway, because it just was ego.
The Sanskrit word is abhiman. Abhiman means self-conception. So if you're not Krishna conscious, every self-conception is false ego. So it's all self-deception. All false ego is self-deception. But, as we discussed in other classes, you can even get deceived on your own false ego. You can have many layers of self-deception. Because you don't want to deal with whatever it is you have to deal with. So maybe I think I'm the body, that's one layer of self-deception. Then I think I'm Superman, that's another layer of self-deception. Then I think I'm perfect, there's another layer of self-deception. So, it's like one on the other. But Rabindra Swarup wrote an article and he was saying, we have the need for self-deception. Because reality can be so bad that you don't want to admit it, because if you don't have an alternative to deal with the reality, then having to admit that this is the way the world is, you get old, you get diseased, you die, is better to not really focus on that, because you don't have a solution. And if you want to be happy, it's better you deny that. That's why people get drunk. They can deny reality. At least for a while. Comes up in what I'm going to read. So I'm going to read some things and we'll discuss. Choosing to be honest with ourselves is often difficult because it requires that we have enough humility to acknowledge the truth, enough self-worth to not become discouraged by it, and enough desire and strength to change once the truth is acknowledged. I'll read that again and I'll explain it. Choosing to be honest. So the first word is choice. You have to choose to be honest. Because you could choose to be dishonest, right? So, choosing to be honest means to recognize something, allowing yourself to recognize the truth of something, as opposed to ignoring it. Ignorance means to ignore. Then, choosing to be honest is difficult because, one, we have to have enough humility to acknowledge what's true, because sometimes we don't want to acknowledge what is true. right? You did that. No, I didn't. You always do that. No, I don't. So, acknowledging what is true. You made a mess of things. No, I didn't. It was her fault. No, it was your fault. No, it was her fault. Acknowledging what's true is difficult, right? Sometimes? Yes? So we need, number one, we need enough humility to acknowledge it. Number two, you have to have enough, for lack of a better word, self-worth or inner strength or inner happiness, so that when you realize the truth about your failure or your frailty or your mistake, that it doesn't destroy you. Because, okay, I can admit it, but now that I admit it, I just go home and cry and give up. That's one way you can react to it, right? Yes?
Do you think that's why there's so much depression in the world? Because people have difficulty facing the truth about themselves?
It could be one of the reasons. Another reason, the world is pretty depressing. That's also why. But, yeah, facing the truth. You know, in other words, some people like to face the truth because for them, if they face the truth, they can correct the situation. But other people don't like to face the truth because they take it personally. So they don't want to face the fact that they made a mistake. It's like, you know, when you go to the doctor, you don't want him to tell you you have a health problem. You want him to tell you everything is perfect. Right? So, you know, you say, doctor, what's wrong with me? And he'll say, do you want me to tell you you're perfectly healthy, or do you want me to tell you what's wrong with you? So you say, all right, well, tell me what's wrong with me. He might say, well, maybe you don't want to hear it. Well, just tell me. So then he tells you, and then you realize you didn't want to hear it. So, because the news is depressing. But a strong person hears it, and then he makes a solution. Okay, what are we going to do? Right? So, you have to have enough internal strength and satisfaction in your life and in your spiritual life that you can acknowledge that something is wrong and not become discouraged by it. So that's number two. One, the humility to acknowledge it. Two, the strength to face it without becoming discouraged. And three, the strength to change it. So you have to acknowledge it. You have to have the strength to accept it, and you have to have the strength to deal with it and change it. Those all three can be difficult, right? Yes? You have more of that wonderful drink?
Yes.
What is it? Ginger and lemon?
Ginger and lemon, yeah. Fresh ginger, just of course.
Everybody gets to see you pouring it.
Nothing cooked.
That was recorded on Facebook, this drink. So does that make sense? I have a WhatsApp group. Some of you are on it, or all of you are on it. Well, I'm reading things I wrote today for the WhatsApp group. And I wrote it on this topic because I was studying it, and then I thought, well, I should write it, succinctly put things in order. So those are three things that can make it difficult to face the truth. Or three things which are required to face. Because once the last thing is changing, and the point is, once you know what's wrong, if you don't change it, then it makes you feel really bad. Like if you don't know what's wrong, and you don't change, you don't feel so bad, right? But once you know what's wrong and you don't change, then you feel bad, right? It's better be in ignorance and not know. Right? If you don't know what's wrong, then it won't bother you. But once you acknowledge it, and then you don't change it, that could be like depressing. right? Yes? Yeah.
Where we can take this power for changing?
Very good question. I like to give short answers to complicated questions. And the short, where do you get the power to change? The question was, where do you get the power to change? Once you realize you need to change. You get the power to change by getting sick, tired, fed up, frustrated, angry, disgusted with not changing. And not a day before. It won't happen. Yes?
The power, if we realize that we get more pleasure if we change.
Yes. It's the same, yeah. But if we realize it's beneficial to change and it's painful not to change.
It's painful not to change is not enough.
It's a stronger motivator than pleasure. Did you know that? People are more motivated to avoid pain than they are to get pleasure. Like, you know, if you gave someone two choices, said, you can get this pleasure, but you're going to have this pain. Or you could avoid this pain, even though you won't get this pleasure. I'll avoid the pain. I mean, at least according to psychology. But what you said is also true. I think they go together. I agree, they go together. But generally, the motivation because of pleasure doesn't come until there's enough motivation of pain. But anyway, the idea is that if you realize it's more painful not to change than it is to change. And the other realization is that if you don't change now, when are you going to change? Like you may never change. Yes?
If you don't have motivation to get some joy, to get some bliss or pleasure, so you're sure that even if you change, you don't get nothing. So better to tolerate pain and not change.
Depends how painful it is. If it's too painful, you won't be able to tolerate it. But if you look at most people's lives, although people are motivated by pleasure, the motivation to change is another thing. Like, you may be motivated by pleasure. Like, you like to do something and you're inspired to do it because it gives you pleasure. But that's different than changing. Changing is harder. So we're talking about the motivation to change. If you suffer enough, you'll change. Like, let's say you have a problem with your husband, and you want to motivate him. And you say, if you're a good husband, I'll kiss you every day. That may not motivate him as much as you say, if you're not a good husband, I'll leave you. And he may not be able to tolerate that pain. Then he changes. What do you think? You don't have that experience? Well, maybe in your case, neither one worked. But if a man is attached to his wife, and the wife says, if you continue doing this, I'll leave you, that pain would motivate him to change. I think they work together. So you understand, okay, if I don't change, the pain of changing is going to be worse. It's not going to be as bad as the pain of not changing. And then, what will I get by changing? That's how we tolerate so many things. Like, you tolerate so many things, I tolerate so many things. Is it that every day we just do what we want to do, or we do what we're supposed to do? So many things we do that we don't want to do, but we know it's the right thing, because in the long run it's going to give us Krishna consciousness. So we tolerate it, right? Yes? Why do you tolerate? You're tempted to do something and you don't do it. Why do you tolerate it? Because you know you'll be better off if you tolerate it, right? We do that every day. You know, if I just did what I wanted to do, my life would look a lot different than it does now. Yours would look different. We all our life. We'd all be in jail probably. Maybe living on the street or whatever. You just do whatever you want to do. So one of the reasons you change is because you realize you'll get so much. Your life will be easier if you change. And if you don't, it'll be more difficult. You agree? No? If you're doing something and it doesn't work for you, it causes you pain, then you realize your life's going to be so much easier if you change. Even though the change is difficult, but it'll make your life easier. No? Her life is very unique. Not like the average person. You had something?
I like this example from your forgiveness seminar. Look at your pain.
Oh, yeah.
And when you understand you will not get rid of your pain and you have to live with this pain for the rest of your life.
Exactly, yeah.
This is such a horrible idea. So I jumped up and I was ready to forgive anything just to get rid of this pain. It was a big change for me. It was really a big change.
Yeah, it is.
This was too much. This, sitting there with 85 or something and still this, no.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I didn't want this.
We did an exercise where we asked them to feel their pain, and I said, imagine you have that, you carry it for 5 years, for 10 years, but then all the way to your deathbed. The idea of carrying that pain your whole life was so heavy, right? Or like, let's say you have an illness and it's handicapping you. And I'm your doctor and I say, you have to change some things in your life. And you say, but I can't change. Then I say, if you change, pretty soon you'll be healthy and you'll have a healthy life for your whole life. And if you don't change, you're going to be sick your whole life. That's a strong impetus, don't you think? That you could be free from that pain for your whole life? Look at it this way. You have a body, and your body has impulses, right? You want to see nice things, you want to smell nice things, you want to hear nice things, you want to speak nice things, and you want to touch nice things, right? Don't you like nice, soft clothes, soft pillows? Don't you like nice fragrances in your house? You know those essential oils you burn in the candles? Don't you like nice music for your ears? Nice prasadam. What did I miss? Seeing things, feeling things, hearing things, smelling, tasting. So we're in this body, right? We, the soul, are in this body. And sometimes this body wants to hear something, or taste something, or smell something, touch something, or say something,
Sometimes.
see something.
Not sometimes.
Not sometimes. Especially something that's really, if we do it, we're just going to, it's driving us crazy to do it, but if we do it, we'll become totally miserable after we do it. And we'll take out a hammer, hit ourselves in the head and say, you're so stupid, why did you do that? That's what it means to be in a body. But sometimes the body, it just pushes, right? The senses push. Do this, just pushes. And in that situation, at least I think, if I could just leave my body, I would be relieved of that pushing. It wouldn't bother me anymore. Because that's what it means to be inside a body. So to be in a body is kind of torture sometimes, unless you tolerate. And if you don't tolerate, you get tortured. Yes? The body, we think the body is a place of pleasure. It's also a torture chamber. Isn't it? The senses give pleasure. They also torture you. Go do this. You'll be happy. Temptation. This is going to make you happy. Go do it. Every time you do it, after you do it, you tell yourself, you idiot, why did you do that? Yes? That's what it means to be in a body. So if you're in a situation where you're being tormented by a desire or one of your senses, if you can control that, then your whole life you'll be free from that craziness that the body causes. And if you don't, you have to deal with that all your life. That's painful. That's an impetus to change. You agree? Da? Yeah? You understand? Yeah. Yes.
Not just senses, but the ego.
Oh yeah.
No, we have certain ego, the way we see ourselves, and then someone I want to appreciate or tell us just one word, and then your mind is out there, and then it's you inflamed, that's it, you agitated, you feel resentful, that's a torture. It's
Yeah.
One word.
One nasty word. It's like an arrow in the heart. Then you have to carry around that arrow in your heart. Yeah, that's... it's hard having a body. Have you ever seen any interviews with people who had out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences? They'll always say it was nicer outside the body. As I was out of my body, I was looking at myself. Really?
And I couldn't remember anything. And it was like big turn off to
Really? Before you were a devotee or after?
No, I was a devotee. I was actually after my delivery. They gave me some anesthesia.
Oh.
I didn't let go. They switched off my consciousness, but they didn't switch off the pain.
Oh, wow.
So I went through the whole experience of this pain without understanding why, who is doing this to me, and it was like I was experiencing it with forever, like it's eternal torture.
Wow. Hare Krishna.
I went back to senses, and I started getting back to senses, and I started to remember there's something besides that. It was like the happiest moment of my life.
You had a reverse experience. Most people have the opposite. But with their experience is pleasurable. Some kind of Brahman experience. Anyway, having a body is the point we're discussing is having a body is a problem. That's for sure, one way or the other. What?
It's a bad body,
Yeah. Yes.
Sometimes we really want to change, but then when we try, we always fail, and then each time we fail, we get frustrated, and we think maybe, and sometimes we think that this is self-deception, that you're tolerating yourself, and then some people say that you're deceiving yourself, means that you're actually another person, and then you're trying very hard, and then but it comes out as if you're insincere, and you're just trying to be somebody who you're not.
Well, it could be true you're trying to be someone you're not, and that's why you can't change. Because it may be against your nature. I don't know your situation. But my first response to that point, she was saying, sometimes you try to change and you can't. Like some men try to be sannyasis and they can't. So you have to, when you're going to change, it also has to be something you can change. Or maybe change less. When I was talking about change, I was referring to self-destructive things that we should be able to control. You might be talking about nature. Maybe, I don't know. No?
Self-destructive things common are just like behavior which is not according to, which is not how Vaishnavas behave.
Yeah, so if it's hard to change, it means it's deeply conditioned. And it means that you're going to have to try a lot harder than you have tried so far. But if other people, if other people think you're insincere, and you don't think you're insincere, you have to deal with that. Figure it out. To thyself be true.
There are people who cannot stop, their self-destruction. I don't know devotees who are alcoholics.
Yeah.
And then something that's like they cannot stop.
Yeah. That's why there are support groups.
And if you don't have.
No, there's secular support groups. In ISKCON, there's no support for alcoholism that I'm aware of, specifically.
It's not just alcoholics, sometimes there are other problems.
Yeah.
They cannot.
That's why in the secular world there are support groups, because that's when the addiction is very strong. They need support groups.
But then what we do in ISKCON.
I send them to those support groups because we don't have them, and it's people in the same situation they're in, and the support groups are God conscious, and it works. Yeah.
But if there is a situation when you cannot get this support,
Then what do? Then you try to create a support group for people with that problem. Those support groups are practically in every city in the world, almost every major city. So they're what? No, everywhere where there's Mayapur's not a major city.
Talking about support groups, I just have my sister-in-law, and she got addicted to drinking wine, so it's got upset her family relationship. So her family members tried to help her and sent her to rehab, but in Australia, it's a beautiful rehab. They will do yoga, meditation, in a beautiful environment. They will eat vegetarian food. It's even materialistic in the environment. They understand. We have to bring you up to the sattva guna to get you out. Obviously, later on, when she comes from this rehab, she again going back to the same situation. She still has to, not to go back to the same pattern. But I was very surprised when she described me the rehab. I thought, that's nice. We devotees also need, you could have created something better, and it was very nice.
Yeah.
Last she explained me, and actually this rehab was bringing you more closer to Krishna consciousness more than you preacher, because after this rehab she came to me, started to ask about yoga. Oh, I want to read this Hare Krishna books, I thought, wow, that's a good thing Krishna is doing.
The thing is, when you're addicted to that degree, you can't help yourself, but you can help. The only thing you can do generally is get into the group, the support group. That you can do. And then the support group will work on you. Because you don't have the strength to do it on your own. That's the whole philosophy. So you just have to agree to join the group, go to the meetings, and do the work. Otherwise, it's very
They
difficult.
also give alternative. They give a higher taste, you know. Like
Yeah.
you can just do meditation. They just think about the self. They find it out of the normal, you know, like life, you know, routine.
Well,
They have time to be alone. Maybe they're scared of it, but they're working on themselves. Here they are finally face to face with their own self, and whatever they have to work on it.
yeah. The most effective is the 12-step, and it's completely God conscious, totally. I mean, the way that works is you can't do it, but He can do it. So it's direct connection. At least what I was told, that's the most effective. And
I think they have everything but Hare Krishna mantra.
yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, it works perfectly for us. But it's structured. And that's why it works, because the structure works. So I think the point is, at least what I've seen, is if you want to change, even though you may not be able to change, but you'll gravitate towards a situation where you can change. Like we became devotees. We couldn't do what we're doing now, but Krishna sent us devotees. And then we could do it. Right? Because we wanted that. But on our own, we couldn't do it. So my short answer to you was, if you want to change, you can change. That's the most important thing. You agree? Then you could ask, how do I want to change? And my shorter answer is, want to change. Because use your intelligence, you'll want to change. You know, look at your life, look at what you're doing, and multiply that by 50 years and say, is that good? And just take a trajectory, draw a line from here to 50 years. If I'm doing what I'm doing, where will I end up? Where I want to end up or somewhere else? And if I think I'm going to end up somewhere else, and I have to change what I'm doing now so I end up where I want to go. Right? That's using intelligence. Yes?
Sometimes Krishna uses this gravity to bring us to the point where we want to be, but we take it as an obstacle or we don't accept it. But actually it's Krishna's gravity to bring us somewhere to change. How do we find that? Is it Krishna's gravity and I can't do anything about it, but it will be beneficial for me, or is it Krishna's putting obstacles so that I would overcome it and not
Yeah. Well, sometimes He puts obstacles because He wants you to work harder, and sometimes He puts obstacles because it may not be meant to. It may be meant not for you to happen. I have that experience. I try to do a certain kind of preaching, and it always failed. And I tried to do another kind of preaching, it always succeeded. And this one kind of preaching I was trying to do, every time it looks like it's going to succeed, it fails. Again and again and again. And I started thinking, I guess Krishna doesn't want me to do that because He's not making any arrangements for it. And so many devotees are saying, I'll arrange this for you. And every time it never happens. Now, I could say, well, you just don't know how to do that kind of preaching, how to get into these kinds of engagements, which could be true. But at the same time, we tried and it didn't work. So sometimes you have to look at, like when I was a young devotee, I was temple president, and so we wanted to get a farm. So I wrote to Prabhupada and said, we want to get a farm. He said, very good. So we went looking for farms. And we're only 4 devotees. So we go out on Harinam all day. But when we were looking for the farm, we'd all go looking for the farm, so there was no Harinam. So after a week or 2 of Harinam, I was starting to feel like, this is kind of a waste, because we're just looking for farms. We don't even have money anyway. And we're not doing any Sankirtan. So I wrote to Prabhupada and said, we've been looking for farms and we stopped Sankirtan. He said, better just do the Sankirtan. So sometimes you take indication. And sometimes it may be more obvious that Krishna sent a situation because you're weak in a certain area, and if you work through it, you'll become stronger. But you have to have intelligence to understand. You know, it's like, let's say there's some guy who wants to marry you, and he's really, say, arrogant, and you might think, oh, this is good, I need an arrogant husband because I'm proud and it'll make me humble. Or you could think, this is really bad because we're going to have a bad relationship. So you have to have the intelligence to determine what's Krishna's arrangement and what would be your mistake. You know, like sometimes you go along with something because it seems like Krishna's arrangement, but actually it's not. It's just our foolishness that we went along with it. Right? And then the result is bad. So you have to have some intelligence to understand. And as I always say, if you don't understand, then just make a decision and do it. And then if it doesn't work, you'll know you made the wrong decision. But I wouldn't suggest that about marriage. I mean, maybe about getting to know somebody, yes. Is this going to work out? Is it not? I don't know. Well, how will you know then? You'll be mental your whole life. Well, just do it then, and then you'll see. If it doesn't work out, then you stop. So sometimes you have to do that. Because you don't know if Krishna wants it or not. Right? Is that okay? Sometimes you just don't know, and the only way to know is to do it. Even Prabhupada would sometimes say that. Devotees would say, this is Krishna's desire, and Prabhupada would say, we'll see. Huh. Oh no. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. Kierkegaard said, there are, you know Kierkegaard? Soren Kierkegaard? Kierkegaard? I think it's Swedish, no? Or Dutch? What? Russian? Kierkegaard. What? Psychologist, philosopher? Where's he from, you know? Yeah. There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. That's obvious. The other is to refuse to believe what is true. That we see that in preaching, right? You say something, people, I don't believe that, right? So this is what I say. People often talk about blind faith, believing in something without evidence to prove it. That's the definition of blind faith, right? You believe in something. Oh. Hare Krishna. I'll be back in Alachua, believe it or not. I'm going to stay there. Oh, you want to call in live questions? Oh my God. Write your questions here. Calling, I'll get distracted. Hold on, okay. So, people often talk about blind faith, believing in something with no evidence to prove it. But what they don't realize is that blind doubt also exists, doubting what is true without evidence to prove otherwise. So there's blind doubt. Nobody talks about blind doubt, they only talk about blind faith. Right? So we say something, no, that's not true. And they have no evidence to prove it's not true. That's called blind doubt. Many, many people engage in blind doubt without realizing they're doing it. Right? So blind doubt is a kind of self-deception. Because you'd have no evidence to disprove it, but you don't believe it. So therefore, you're kind of guilty of the same accusation that you're making about blind faith. Do you know there are many kinds of self-deception that are subconscious or conditioned? Subconscious in the sense they're habitual and you don't know it. Like if you read an article that says something, then you'll get it in your mind, that's true. And if I come with the other information, your immediate reaction will be, I'm wrong. And you'll say, well, what I read was this. And I can say, well, what I read is this. And I read 10 articles, and you only read one. And then we can get an argument. You say, but my article was written by the authority in this field. And he's a broader thinker, so he doesn't think like everybody else. You know, so the psychological mechanism is, if you make up your mind, it's very difficult for evidence to change your mind. Like even evidence comes, your mind is made up. The evidence doesn't change your mind. Isn't that amazing? Did you know that? That evidence, once a person's mind is made up, often evidence does nothing to change it. It's a psychological mechanism. It's the way we work. Like I can disrupt you now. I'll say something disruptive to some of you. Prabhupada never said to chant the Panchatattva mantra before each round. Some of you or all of you may have been told to chant it before each round. And maybe you've been told that Prabhupada said it, but he never said it. But if you've heard that and been doing that, your initial reaction is, wait a minute. I was told as a new bhakta or a bhaktin to chant this. And now you're saying, don't chant it. So your immediate reaction will be, that's not right. Right? And then I'll say, okay, well if it's right, show me where Prabhupada said it. Because no God brother I know has ever showed me where Prabhupada said it, neither have they heard it. And you might say, well, in other words, if it's deeply in there, you'll have a really hard time with it. You understand? Anything you heard as a new devotee, if it were wrong and I tell you it's wrong, your first reaction, it'll be a little difficult in the beginning. Don't you think? Because it's been in there since you've been a devotee. And then they have this other, it gets really weird. If you believe something, psychologically, what happens is you will only read books, articles, and go to websites that support what you believe. So the only thing you're reading supports it, which creates the reality that it's more correct. Isn't that interesting? And you only surround yourself with information and people that support it. So it makes it seem 100% true. So that's another way we deceive ourselves. And then, if you read something that doesn't support it, you just dismiss it. It can't be right. Have you ever done that? Yes? No? Maybe? Yeah. Like sometimes, if you read anything written by devotees, just by looking at who wrote the article, you can already kind of tell what the view is going to be. And you may decide not to read it because you don't want to read a view you don't agree with. And you know that devotee is going to express a view you don't agree with it. And if somehow or other you start reading it, you may be reading things and just saying, I don't agree, I don't agree, I don't agree. And things he's saying might be true. kind of self-deception. Like, it's hard to be objective. What if I just sat here for the next hour and gave a lecture and said, the only duty of women is to have children, stay at home, cook and clean, and serve their husbands. That's it, nothing else. And when you joined ISKCON, the first thing you did was not cook and clean and stay at home, but they kicked you out on the street for 10 hours a day, and you did that for 10 years. And now I'm telling you that was all wrong. They should have got you married the second day you're in the ashram, and you should have 10 kids by now. And you should have churned a lot of butter, and you'd be strong and thin. So that would probably upset you, wouldn't it? It probably would. Right? What if you joined a temple and that's what you heard from the day you joined? It was a big community and all the women had big families and very stable families, and they were really good wives and husbands were really good husbands. And I sit here, thank you, I sit here for the next hour and tell you, your duty is to spread this movement and go out on Sankirtan. And you should form a nursery. All your kids should be taken care of by 2 women. They should cook, and you should be on Sankirtan all day, because you're just wasting time staying home taking care of your kids. That would upset you if you were raised the other way. That might upset you even if you weren't raised the other way. But that would definitely upset you if you were. And these are both things which Prabhupada taught and was preached in ISKCON in different places. So does that make sense? When you get that idea in your head, then it's hard to see any other idea. Yes?
Sometimes you feel that you will never be objective because there are different groups of devotees, everyone has different opinions, and everyone's accepted because everyone serves Krishna different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Then they say you should find your swajatis, your like-minded devotees, you should just stick to them, but still, when we talk about objectivity, it's a very questionable topic.
Well, it was true what you say. Wow. I forgot to put the record button on. Oh, the card's full. Oh my God. Oh well. So, there's 2 things you brought up. One's being objective and one's being subjective objectively. In other words, I can be objective and say, okay, there's validity to both those views. The woman being a wife, not working, being at home, taking care of the family, making that her primary duty, serving her husband. Okay, no one can argue with that if that's what a woman chooses. And if a woman wants to be active in serving and spreading Krishna consciousness, there's plenty of support for that in Prabhupada's purports and his letters. Now you, if you're trying to be objective, would have to acknowledge both of those are true. And now you, subjectively, have to decide what's going to work best for you and your husband and your children and your situation. So you can be objective subjectively. I was listening today, Prabhupada said something so funny and so heavy. He said, getting married is like taking a big rock, a big boulder, and putting it on your head and carrying it. He's talking about to the men, not to the women. He said, you as brahmachari, you are free. You are a free man. Your life is simple. And once you get married, it's like putting a big burden on your head. You get so much to worry about, so much to deal with. Okay, So now I'm a man, I'm brahmachari. How do I deal with it? I acknowledge that. Yes, it's true. It's a burden. But maybe if I can't stay brahmachari, I have to recognize the value of being a grihastha. Or maybe I'm undecided, but I recognize for certain men there is value in being grihastha. So now I have to subjectively decide. I have to acknowledge there's truth in being free if you're not married. And if you need to be married and you don't get married, then you're not free. You're also bound by your own desire to enjoy or to have a family or to have children and so forth, to have your own place and so on. So you look at both, you acknowledge the pros and cons of both, and then you make it a subjective decision what's best for you. And when you make the decision, you don't tell, let's say you decided to get married, and then, I'm the big brahmachari in the temple, then I decided to get married, and the next day when I make my proclamation I'm getting married, I make another statement, all you brahmacharis, you're all fakes. You're just pretending. Now that would be very bad. So I decide, for me, this was the best thing. I was pretending to be brahmachari. Really, I wasn't. Internally, I wasn't a brahmachari. Externally, it looked like I was. So I want to make this decision. So for me, it's good. But for him or him or him, it's not good. He doesn't need it. He can live simply. Right? Does that make sense? Did that answer your question, or are you asking something else?
I like the conception of subjective objectivity.
You like the subjective objectivity, yeah. But to be objective is, you see, to be objective you have to be detached. Because subjectivity is also coming from attachment. Because I want it to be a certain way. So I want to see things a certain way because I believe this is the way they are or should be. But to be objective, you have to be detached and accept this is how it is. Not necessarily how I want it to be, but it's how it is. I'm sure there are things that Prabhupada said that some devotees think, I wish he didn't say that. It's so hard to accept. But you have to accept it because he said it. That's objectivity. Well, he didn't really mean it. In some cases he may not have meant it the way we understand it, but in general we can't say he didn't mean it. We can say we can be objective about what he meant. So once you're objective and you acknowledge it, then you can deal with it. Discuss it, what does it mean, how to deal with it, how to apply it. But if right off the bat you're already subjective, then you'll end up fighting with people. There are devotees that really want to establish traditional culture, where they have communities in which no women have any leadership positions, no women are working, they're just wives and mothers. And there's many devotees that really like that. And there's many devotees that really don't like that, or don't like it fully. So, should we have a big argument about it? Or should we create a community where that's going on and everyone who wants to live that way could join the community? Or should we tell everyone in ISKCON, if you don't live that way, there's something wrong with you? What's better? First one or the second one? Yeah, obviously the first one. So yeah, if that's how you feel, that's what you want to do, go for it. Prabhupada said it. It's there in his books. But, is that your phone or mine?
No, it's yours.
Ah, really? Oh, my phone's going to go off because it's 7 o'clock. Yeah. And then somebody might think, no, we have many intelligent women, they can do great preaching work. And so you have a city in the center and women, this is what they want to do. They don't relate to traditional roles of women, and they were raised in society to believe that they can accomplish a lot. And and maybe when they're older they'll be more traditional, but now they want to do this. So you create a center in the city where they can do that. And you don't complain and say, this old traditional stuff, it's old-fashioned, nobody will do it, nobody likes it, it doesn't make sense. You do the preaching. Prabhupada encouraged them to preach. Okay. So, today my daughter is having a birthday party. And it started before I came here, and I thought we should end now so I can go to the birthday party. Is that okay? I have your permission? Okay. If you asked a question and I didn't answer it, please forgive me. But I need to rush. And we'll continue tomorrow, same time. All right? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gauda Premanandi. Hari Hari.